Hello YouTubers, welcome to my channel. Well, the day is finally here. It is time to talk about Lady C's book. Now, I want to begin this with where we left off, starting with chapter 2, which was a very long chapter. There was a lot she covered in this chapter. I feel like this chapter really helped me to see a lot of the things that I didn't know about the past history of Meghan and her growing up, and some things with Harry as they relate to his upbringing by Princess Diana, who you guys all know. I just love my Princess Diana. But I must say, I did kind of start seeing her in a different light, which is good because you don't really want to have a one-sided view of someone. I really did appreciate Lady C going in and talking about some of the other things that weren't so positive about Princess Diana, because for me, she could do no wrong. But seeing this side of her kind of really helped me to see her in a more balanced view of Princess Diana. And that was a good thing. And so perhaps I should go back and read the other book that Miss Lady C wrote about Princess Diana. Even though it might sting a little bit, I should read it just to see. But I also could appreciate the parallels that Lady C did with the growing up of Meghan and Harry as they were brought up. They had a lot of similarities amongst their upbringing, and it really helped me to visualize how they are thinking, how they see the world today based on how they were brought up, both with parents who were divorced, who wanted their children to have the best upbringing, therefore getting along as divorced, separated parents so that their children could have the best upbringing. Although at times it was a little bit more toxic for Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Now, when I look at the upbringing of Meghan Markle, I can really envision that, she was, as she said, the flower. They called her Flower. And she had an upbringing where the parents really wanted to give Meghan everything. She always had the best of everything. She never really had those struggles. She didn't have the struggles of being raised by parents who neglected her, who didn't have the money to give her all the things that she wanted. She came from a middle-class family. She had a father who made pretty good money as a lighting director. He was an award-winning director almost every year, got an award for his lighting, even helped out with her school productions when she was in high school. So she had a lot of things from her parents that afforded her a very decent upbringing. And that says a lot about a person because it also adheres to the decisions you make when you're older based on your upbringing. The issue with the racism. So Meghan, there are people who have suffered from racism who can say their upbringing was issues with race growing up. Maybe they were called the N-word a lot, or they were discriminated against. They had missed opportunities because of their race. This was something that really didn't happen to Meghan, because when you look at Meghan, especially growing up, she didn't really look like a typical child of color. I mean, you could have probably seen that she may have had some Hispanic in her, or Italian, some Mediterranean in her because of the texture of her hair, but her skin color, it wasn't a caramel color. It didn't have a brown tone to it like some biracial children have. So you could easily mistake her for something other than being a mixed child. So she would not have necessarily had those conflicts of her skin color being a cause for her not getting the things that she's wanted, or strife that she may have faced growing up as a child of color. She pretty much got whatever she wanted. She had a really good upbringing. I can think for even myself growing up, I remember specific things growing up. I remember being called the N-word. I remember not being allowed to go to the local swimming pool because I was black. It was just known that black people just didn't go there. I remember walking down the sidewalk, hearing all the kids, having fun in the swimming pool, and just accepting the fact, oh, I can't go there. And just accepting it and just thinking, man, that is messed up. I can't go have fun. Okay. And then just going off and doing what I did as a kid. She never really had that. So when I hear racism in the context of her as an adult now, when she was in the royal family, it had to have been a more undertone racism. Or it could have been because of other things, maybe her attitude, how she behaved, how she was rebellious. It could have been a number of other things. But what I'm trying to say is she didn't really have that blatant racism in her face growing up, as pointed out by Lady C in her book, because she spoke to many of her childhood friends and teachers. And by the things that she was able to accomplish, she had an upbringing that afforded her a lot of things that most white kids would have had. Now, she did talk about how Meghan wanted to, when she was in college, she didn't really want to open up Pandora's box when it came to, her mom being black and her dad being white, because she mostly grew up around white people, and they had parents who were still married and they had opportunity. But, Meghan kind of coming in saying, this is my situation, my divorced parents, my mom's black, whatever. That was something she purposely suppressed because she did not want to have that come to the forefront for her. She didn't want to open up questions being asked about her upbringing and questioning whether or not people were going to look at her differently. She made a conscious decision not to really bring that to the foreground. Okay. And we can see that she has done that now. We can see that she's done that with her father. And I find it interesting that she's also suppressed the rest of the relationships that she's had with the other family members on her mom's side. It almost makes you wonder, at what point do you stand up for what you believe in? Or are you going to just keep walking that fine line so you can keep climbing that ladder? Knowing full well, opening up the box now of Pandora doesn't matter because you've already been vetted by the royal family. People have written books about you. More is discoverable. So at this point, you can just let it all out and be very proud. But we see that she's still doing that. So I have to question why. You shouldn't even care at this point because people know. But really, you shouldn't care at all because you are who you are and your struggles are what is going to make you who you are. And she didn't really have any struggles. So she was trying to do everything she could to make her climb up this ladder as smooth as it could be. She should never have cared that her mother was black. She should have been proud of that. Oh, that rhymed. She goes on to say that Meghan did not shy away from challenges. She embraced them. She did some time as volunteering. She points out, giving to people who you don't know is one thing, but when you start to give to people that you do know, there's this gray area. There's this like, well, if I do this, what, you gonna want more from me? Am I going to give to you so that you can just try to piggyback and be a part of my tribe and be wanting to hang out with me and we kind of doing this whole ride and rodeo together? Like, she always walked that fine line of wanting to stay not too close to the people that she knew because she saw herself rising up the stage of notoriety. So she's done a lot of things that were very deliberate, and we can see her in her actions today, and it validates everything that we have said before. So we know she has this humanitarian side of her forgiving, but it makes you almost question, then why can you be a humanitarian for people you don't know, but you question it for the people that you do know? Why is that? And my whole theory around that is, it's because you want to give and you want to be like, bye, see ya. Don't want to be ya. Like, wash your hands of that situation, head off. People think you're a good person, and then you ain't got nothing more to do with them. Your hands are washed clean. The humanitarian side of her was something that she knew she should do because it was something that you could do as a person who had variety, you had wealth, you had all the things that you wanted to do, but there was a sense of being a good person, being perceived as a good person that she wanted to inculcate. she wanted to have that side of her, but up to a certain point. So her father instilled in her to be proactive. You can always have whatever it is that you wanted. She always had this confidence about her that she had instilled in her growing up her whole life. And then she talks about that whole thing with Procter and Gamble when she was 11 years old, and how she wrote this letter about the dish soap and saying, you know, it shouldn't say that women everywhere. It should say something that wasn't so derogatory towards women. It should be more like people all around the world. And Lady C made a very good point. And Meghan, as an actress, you know, this is a world that envisions things a certain way. You live on the notoriety of your popularity, your imagination to who people perceive you to be. And so what she pointed out was that she could take a narrative that wasn't quite what the truth was, but it gave you enough of the story that you could infuse a perception of that truth to be your own. And that's something that Meghan has done with that whole story about the letter she wrote to Procter and Gamble about the commercial for the dish soap, thinking that these were things that she was able to move. But the coincidences of those things happening could have also gone another way. It could have not necessarily been the letter. Who's to say other people didn't write in about that? You know, who is to say that Meghan was the only one who saw that commercial and said, why is it a woman has to be proud of being able to have this dish soap that's going to help her with her dishwashing? Did Meghan get an actual letter that said we changed the commercial because of you? Or was it implied? Was it implied? And also she said Meghan could not have been 11 years old in 1995. She had to have been 14. So there's some, you know, there's things about the truth that have been slightly fabricated to suit one narrative. But the truth is kind of cut another kind of a way. So I found that very interesting, intriguing, because it's almost like a magic trick. You can see that there was something that happened that made it look like it wasn't what it was. But when you go behind and you look at the magician's secrets and you look at how he did the magic trick, then you see, oh, that's how he did it. And that's what we're finding with Miss M.M. We're finding that there's one story and narrative told, but when you look at all the different other options of how that story that enlightens or that makes her perceived bigger and better than who she is, you can find a completely different narrative. And so that is something that I find that could be a running theme throughout this book. This is just on chapter 2. Okay, so I said that Diana was trying to instill in her kids not to take things too serious, but to have fun and to grow a little bit. She said that she didn't really care what they did as long as they didn't get caught. Other boys that were brought up in the aristocrat society were they were a little bit more diplomatic about their comings and goings. And I think for Harry, having Meghan come into his life now, knowing that, you know, he always had that goal or ambition to be a wild child and to do things the way he wanted to, he found his way out when he did meet Meghan. But earlier we have her friend Elizabeth McCoy who said that the early conflict about her having a mixed race, it will ultimately strengthen her, and it would give her empathy for those who did not fit in easily into life's many boxes. If someone was being treated unfairly, she would stick up for them. She was genuinely a decent human being. She looked out for other people who needed help. I can relate to this because I know for myself growing up, you know, some kids are good. Some kids are not so good. you have a contrast of different behaviors growing up. But I think she had learned a lot of valuable lessons growing up. I think that at the same time, she got everything she wanted. So she never really had the real struggles. When the tough got really hard, what do? Do you stick it out, or do you just kind of wash your hands of it and say, okay, I don't want to deal with that, it's too hard? And I don't see her having gone through struggles that would have really toughened her up the way that she can relate to today. Now, I can appreciate that she was a nice person. Her friends thought she got along well with others. She cared about other people. Trying to change the narrative to say that your upbringing was hard and difficult just so that your later life of accomplishments would be more appreciated because you had all these tough struggles. I have a problem with that. And I don't see that she really had those kinds of problems. But to her credit, being a good person, people always spoke highly of her. Her former homeroom advisor, Christine Knudsen, thought she'd take conversations to a deeper level. She had a lot of depth, probably because of her own experiences and hard knocks growing up, referring to her parents' divorce. Though equally, the issues surrounding her racial identity must have influenced Meghan's thinking. And I can imagine she did have problems with her own identity, having parents who were of different races. So that could have had its own struggles in itself. If anything, it helped her because she was able to identify with one side, which is the white privilege side, but at the same time, she could identify with her mother's struggles, having gone through certain things because she actually looked like a black woman. So she could have sympathized with her mom and all the things that her mom would have had to have gone through. But Meghan herself didn't have those struggles because she fit in, she got what she wanted mostly in life. And she was able to take that to the next level. She was able to use it to her advantage. I also wanted to talk about when she was in school, she changed her major. We know she originally started studying English. And Lacey made a good point. Why would she not take up theater and acting in the beginning? Rather, she studied English because she thought, well, this acting thing, I can just do that. I don't really need to study it. But she did, to her credit, later change her major to theater and international business, or studies. So you can see that she had this wanting desire to get into acting. She did study it. She never really took it to the level of seriousness. Observation of the book in early life. You know, Meghan, to her credit, she did do some volunteering. She took the suggestions from the people who were her teachers, and she looked at opportunities in just trying different things. And I think that's a good thing because a lot of times kids, you know, you offer them something, and especially today, you offer them to do something and they don't want to experiment. They don't want to try new things. But I did see in her younger years from her teachers and her friends trying to show her to take on new and different things. And her being of mixed race could have had something to do with her willing to take on different challenges because she may have saw challenges in her own life being a mixed race child. So to her credit, I would say that was a good thing. But, you know, like with almost anything, you can become someone who is persuaded by the good life or persuaded by the certain things that you might have to do to get where you want to be, kind of a thing. So she had this pure and innocence about her in the world and what it could offer. And so you kind of see how things kind of got distorted and changed for her. I wish almost that she could have still been to this day that young girl that we saw growing up, because she would have been able to do a lot more good today. But sometimes you get a taste of the sweet life and you like, oh, I kind of like this a lot better than the struggle. And it takes a really special, strong person to overcome certain temptations. Yeah, I'm just going to say that. But as we'll see maybe later, there'll be other things that will come up. But I think for this chapter 2, we really got a lot of good insight into, who Meghan was growing up. People had a lot of nice things to say about her. She seemed to be somebody that I probably would have played with when I was younger. I like how her father really encouraged her to try new things, to really always go for what you want. And I think most kids should always try to go for whatever it is that they want. The world is their oyster, right? You have this whole world ahead of you, and you can try and become a lot of things when you have the support of your family. And I don't really see Meghan having really looked at where she came from and looked at all the people that helped her to kind of give that back now that she has reached a certain pinnacle, and to really look at what she's been able to accomplish and be grateful and thankful to the people that helped her along the way, especially her father, who did pay for her college. But like I was saying earlier, how you kind of leave certain things out to fit your own narrative. And that's what I've seen from the writing of what Lady C is saying, is that she's painted a picture of herself, and she's kind of manipulated the circumstances slightly to fit her in a certain kind of a light. So we'll have to see what happens in the rest of the book. But that's what I got from chapter 2. But I felt like I really got to know her upbringing a lot better, and also Harry for that matter, and how he was raised by his mother. Harry going into the military, which this is so surprising to me that, he really became a man from his service in the military. He really became someone who really grew a lot and learned a lot from having that discipline and being accountable for your actions. Although I'm sure he was still protected in a certain special kind of way, still being from the royal family. But to another extent, to his credit, there were things that he had to do that he wasn't used to. So him going into the military really helped him to become the better version of himself. So it makes you question, why would he want to give that up for a marriage? Why would that even come into play for his future decisions that we know now today, based on, what it gave him growing up? That's something that really made me really sit back and think about that. So we'll have to see what happens later in the next chapter. But for chapter 2, Lady C, I think she did a really good job going around talking to people that really knew them and really highlighted what we almost could see, but she helped us to see it a little bit better. Lady C did her job in chapter 2. I could really see those images that she was painting, and some of the points where she would put in her own narrative about things. She hasn't really spoiled things, because I know there are things that she hasn't said here that we know to be, we got to think about now, because we know the picture has changed later in life for her. But she's going to keep us stringing along about, what is to come later. But we've got some good ground level covered here. And let's see what happens in the next few chapters of this book, okay? And until next time, you guys, peace and love. I love you all. And let's keep it going. Keep it moving. Bye-bye.